One of the things I say is that the main problem with the statistics is words, and words are important. And one of the things we cover in my class is statistics is the study of data. Well, okay, everybody knows that. But here's the problem. The same word is used. Statistics are random sample approximations of population parameters.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast, helping appraisers increase their efficiency, quality, and make more money. Here's the guy who makes it his life's mission to create value for real estate appraisers nationwide. Your host and the Appraiser Coach, Dustin Harris.
Welcome, everybody. Dustin Harris hanging out once again in the podcast chair. Got a great guest coming up for you. Want to pause first. Remind you that we are sponsored by three great companies. One, of course, being the great Alamode. Alamode, of course, is the software that I've been using for years and years and years. You should be as well. Go to alamode.com or 800-ALAMODE for more information. We are sponsored by DataMaster. DataMaster is the ability to save 30 to 60 minutes, not a day, not a week, not a month, folks, per report. I don't know how many reports you're doing on a regular basis, but 30 to 60 minutes per report can be your time savings. Check them out. Go to datamasterusa.com. One more time. It's datamasterusa.com. And of course, we're sponsored by Working RE Magazine. Working RE is the magazine for appraisal professionals across the fruited plain are going to Working RE for information about their profession, their industry, and for all kinds of great sponsors as well there that will help you to be a more efficient, more effective appraiser. Again, it's workingre.com. One more time, it's workingre.com. Well, folks, for a second time, I have a great individual on the line, Mr. George Dell. Welcome to the program, George.
Good morning or good afternoon, as it may be.
I appreciate you being on, my friend. George, of course, is the owner of Value Metrics. It's a value-based educational company. George has been he's been authored in Appraisal Journal. His education in economic statistics analysis drove him to pursue an additional applications in the real estate analysis by further learning about mathematics and fundamentals. George has earned his MAI, SRA, and ASA designation, and he is out of San Diego and runs a blog called georgedell.com. That's pretty simple to find, georgedell.com. George, last time I had you on the program, it was quite a popular episode. You're kind of a popular guy. I think a lot of people look up to you, my friend.
Oh, thank you. I'm semi-retired, and I'm just trying to get back to a profession that's really been pretty good to me.
Well, good for you. Good for you. I look up to you as well. I think I said on the air last time that you're one smart cookie. I still believe that. My mommy told me long ago, if you want to be great, surround yourself with great people, and you're one of those individuals, George. So I just appreciate you acknowledging the small guy like myself and let me be a part of your life, at least on small levels. So George, it runs as we talked about a blog called it can be found at georgedell.com, and it's all about appraising. It's all about the ins and outs. One thing I like about you, George, is you're willing to say it the way that it is. You don't really, and I guess maybe it's the point in life that you're at. You really don't pull punches. You just kind of state what you see coming, and you kind of have a unique aspect on what's going on in the appraisal industry. Maybe we can start there. What's kind of your outlook on how things are going to be changing in the next couple of years?
Well, I hear a lot of people saying, two things. Computers will never replace the appraiser. And yet we're getting all this evidence that they are, in fact, have been replacing the appraiser for about 20 years. TV came out. It just doesn't happen overnight. It happens 2% a year or 2% every month. And the end is near. The appraisal profession is dying. And in a sense, actually, that's exactly right, because the appraisal profession, as it has been for 80 years or so, the world has changed and the profession is not. That's kind of it, summing it up.
That's a great way to put it. I've been asked on several occasions, George. Individuals say to me, "Is the appraisal industry dying?" And usually they say, "As we know it." And I think that's the key term. Do I believe that we as appraisers will be out a job in the next few years? I guess it depends on who we are. If we're willing to bend and change and for the better, in my opinion, to be able to utilize rather than shun and run from big data, to be able to utilize that data to help us to be better valuation experts. I think there's going to be a job for us in the future, but it's going to look much, much different than it does today.
Well, that's exactly right. And for those who want to get with it, so to speak, I think the opportunity is great. The people that are left in the profession 5 and 10 and 15 years from now are going to know more and provide far better service. I believe higher pay.
Yeah, no, I agree. We had Ernie Durbin. I don't know if you caught this, but Ernie Durbin was on our program here a few weeks ago talking about harbor pilots as compared to ship captains. And harbor pilots truly are the more advanced or more experienced of the two, and much higher paid than a ship captain is a harbor pilot that will bring these big ships into the harbor that they are so familiar with. And I thought it was just a really good analogy of where we're looking to the future, that we're going to become experts in our fields and in our markets and understanding the ins and outs of the data that is received. The old days of 3 comps and you're done are well over, and even more so into the future, I think.
Exactly.
Well, that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today, George. You wrote an article, I should say a series of articles recently. And by the way, if you're not signed up for George's email list, you need to get on his website. Again, it's georgedell.com. Sign up for free emails that are sent out with regular blog updates, and you'll be able to be in the know as well. George, when this airs, you will be done and printed with a 6-part series. Starts out with a blog, an article called Why Stats, Why Graphs. Let's start, first of all, why did you feel it necessary to write this series?
Well, it's the 4 words are really the 4 words of my primary introductory class, which is stats, graphs, and data science. And I thought, sometimes it's really a good idea to go down to fundamentals and basics and say, what is this really about? Define what are stats, define what are graphs, define what is data, and define what is science as it applies to appraisal. For example, there's been kind of an ongoing argument in the profession as long as I've been an appraiser. Is it a science or an art? Well, it's both. There's art in science, and there's science in art.
Very good, very good. Yeah, it's kind of a mixture of the two, isn't it?
Yeah, and actually, kind of wrapping up your earlier question is that the profession is not done, nor is it going to survive. It's both. It's going to die and it's going to go on. But it's going to, and it's computers that have made the change. It's the technology in both the data and in the ability to manipulate and organize and get knowledge and information out of data. So basically, really what I've come to a conclusion is that computers and the software we have available today can sharpen appraiser judgment. The appraiser judgment is absolutely going to be necessary for a long time. It's the computers and graphs and stats that can sharpen that judgment of the appraiser that knows markets. But this also means that the whole profession is going to have to change. And so far, it's been resistant to change.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I think that's human nature, but even more so when it comes to appraisers.
I hate to say that. It tends to be a conservative profession, but part of it is because we're beat into it. Do it this way, do it that way, do it my way. There's rules, regulations, laws, client pressure. We're restricted to not being creative and finding new and better ways for the very people that need us.
Yeah, I agree. Let's dive into this. I highly encourage that my listeners go to georgedell.com, pull up this 6-part series. It is exceptional. But let's dive in right in the very beginning. And by the way, these are what I love about you, George, is you get it when it comes to blogs and the attention span of people, that your blog posts are typically short and sweet, and they get right to the point. I think our attention span is very small these days, and I love the fact that in just a couple hundred words, I can really get the gist of what you're trying to put out there. And this series is no different. Certainly, it's a 6-part series, but each of the parts are bite-sized, and I think appraisers and listeners can dig right into those. Right in the very first part of the series, in fact, episode number 1, if you will, you ask a series of questions. I just like to kind of go through those a little bit as maybe a teaser for the other parts of that series that will come up. And if you don't mind, George, we can just dig right into those and maybe get your short, sweet, and to the point answer on each of these. Number 1 is where do statistics make sense?
Oh, sure. That's important. One of the things I say is that the main problem with the statistics is words. And words are important. And one of the things we cover in my class is statistics is the study of data. Well, okay, everybody knows that. But here's the problem. The same word is used. Statistics are random sample approximations of population parameters. So those two words get back, even in academic journals, in fact, especially so.
Mm-hmm.
Those two words and back and forth, and you wonder which is the person talking about. The other point is that most of us in about 3rd grade we start learning about pie charts and mean and median and average and things like that. And then about the 7th grade we get a review of that, the simple descriptive statistics. And then we get pushed into this thing called inferential statistics. And that's when my head started to swim, and I think a lot of people's head starts to swim. That's when you're taking a random sample to describe a larger population. You get into a whole bunch of stuff like p-values and z-scores and chi-squareds and confidence intervals and that kind of thing. And I'm foolish enough to have continued that in economics and econometrics and even into graduate school. And I took every statistics class offered by San Diego State, the master's program in statistics. And you never hear about easy stuff, this descriptive, mean, median, mode, and range, and standard deviation. Yeah, and you get into this complicated stuff, and what happens is everybody assumes that statistics is inferential statistics, and then try to shove it, in our case, onto appraisal. And anytime I'm giving a talk anywhere, I'll say, okay, you're all appraisers in a room. Do any of you take random samples to pick your comps? I've never go up.
Yeah, I hear you.
Never had a hand go up. So basically, what I do is discard so much of my life studying this stuff that is, in my opinion, basically, substantially not useful and unhelpful to appraisers. And it's the hard stuff. It's the easy stuff, the modeling, applying appraiser competence, knowing markets, and using the simple statistics and graphs.
Okay, let's talk about that a little bit. You mentioned the word graphs. You talked about pie charts. Let's talk about visuals. I'm a visual person. I'd much rather read a book that has pictures in it. So tell me a little bit about that and how those fit into appraisal. Or should they?
Well, sure. First of all, pie charts are for kids. It's great for teaching kids proportions.
I'm still a kid at heart, George. Come on.
Well, you can do it, but it's not a grown-up tool. Most statisticians roll over at a pie chart, and I have a graph in my class, a picture in my class that has a piece of pie cut out. I think it's pecan pie, which is my favorite because this is the only place where pie chart is useful.
But it's very useful in that sense.
Yeah. But here's what's really important about graphs is what we're trying to optimize or maximize or do the best at is use the computer for what the computer's good at, but at the same time use the human brain for what it's good at. And the main way of communicating between the human brain and what computers are capable of is visuals. Let me kind of sum this up. Basically, the human brain is really incredibly good at generalizing. In fact, psychologists now think it's the one thing that distinguishes us from the rest of the animal kingdom is we're able to generalize. A striped thing with 4 arms that goes roar You stay away from that. Your uncle died. A sample of one. The uncle got eaten. Type things that go roar.
Right.
But the human brain zonks out after about 4 or 5 or 6 and loses its ability to generalize. This is where tables, graphs, and statistics, or descriptive statistics, are very good. The human brain can understand that. You lose a little information that the brain would not have understood anyway. So that's it. Graphs are a really good way, probably the major way of the human brain connecting with the computer and back and forth.
I agree. Yeah, when I see a scatter plot, for example, it's pretty typically easy to say whether this is a random sampling or whether this shows some type of a trend and what that trend is. I mean, when you see those dots on a piece of paper, it's a completely different experience than seeing those informational numbers maybe on a spreadsheet, and I love that in the sense that it helps us to understand. But like you said, we do lose a little information in the process, which leads me to the next question. That frankly, I need help not just with the answer to the question, but I need help, George, with the question itself. What exactly are you asking, and then what is the answer when you say, when does data become information?
Well, that's really a very important question. Asking the right question. I do litigation work, and so often and review work of that type, the appraisers ask the wrong question. So that's huge. Let me think here. Here's an underlying issue for us: is nowhere in our literature, not in USPAP, not in any of the other standards, nowhere can I find what is a comp. It's simply not there. Even in our Bible, the appraisal of real estate, within 2 pages, it asks the questions, well, what's a comp? Well, a comp is similar to the subject. Well, what's similar? Well, it competes with the subject. And then the next paragraph, what is a competitive property? It's one that can be compared to the subject. It's at least circular. And I have a slide on that that's really funny. And one with the 3 bears where baby bear figures it out. But you have to come to my class to see what baby bear does.
So let's talk about this. When we as appraisers talk about data, sometimes that is paired with the word big. So we talk about big data and lots of information or lots of data. But the question you ask is, when does data become information? I think a lot of appraisers are saying, isn't it the same thing?
No, completely different. Actually, that's a great question because it's a very important one, and actually one of the easier, simpler concepts to get. Think about data. I mean, right now, I'm told that the amount of data that we have today is double of all the data that has ever been accumulated in the history of mankind, and it's doubling about 40% every year or more. But data is just data, and is the price of tea in China relevant? No. So that leads us to the very first. There's data becomes information in only 2 ways: sorting it, contrasting it, classifying it. For us, the question is it a comp or not a comp? Does the price of tea in China matter? No. However, if you're building a tea distribution plant in Indianapolis, oh, wait a minute, maybe the price of tea is a factor for a commercial appraiser. So one of the appraiser's job, and it's called abductive reasoning, is figuring out what probably matters and what probably does not. So that's a starting point. So comparing or sorting is the number 1 tool. The number 2 tool is association. What things go together or go in opposite directions? And we deal with that by looking at the correlation, that's mathematically. And then regression. When we know that one thing causes the other, then we use simple regression. By the way, I do little or no multiple regression in my classes, if I can just throw this in there. Multiple regression is something that takes about 2 or 3 or 4 graduate level, PhD level classes to really be able to use properly. How the heck do we think we can teach a room full of appraisers how to do it in 7 hours?
Because we all have those advanced degrees, George. I don't know about you.
Yes.
All right, good point. That's a good point. As Josh Wallet says, it's a tool and may not be the best tool to be used, especially for what we do. Which really leads to the last question that you have in your opening of this series, and that is, what is the skill and art of data science? So we've talked about stats, we've talked about graphs. Let's talk about data science. What is that? First of all, what does that mean? And let's talk about the art and skill of such.
Well, okay, the given definition of science is, if you Google it on the computer, it's science is the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation and experiment. Then your brain starts kind of zonking out. Boy, that doesn't sound like at all like what an appraiser does. But if you cut that back a little bit, so wait a minute, are we dealing with the physical world or the natural world? Let's cut that out. Well, it's the natural world. It's what exists. Basically, appraisers cannot do experiments. And I grew up with this. When we think about science or scientists, you think about the guy in a robe pouring chemicals into a bottle or something like that. But science is also a study of what exists through observation or experiment. Well, appraisers can't do experiments, so we're stuck with what we're left with is a pretty broad definition of what is science, but it's shorter. Valuation is the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the natural world through observation. We've got to work with what is there, not what we can make up.
Okay, good. And what I want to do, George, is really dig into what this means for you, what this means for me, what this means for the future of appraising. But I first want to pause and talk about appraising in the here and now and how you are doing it. Are you saving time and energy and getting higher quality reports, folks? If you're not, you need to check out DataMaster. DataMaster allows you to be able to, as we talked about today, data. Okay, data. Who is the data master? Data is what we deal with. As appraisers, we're dealing with art, we're dealing with science, we're dealing with the ability to interpret data, and we shouldn't be wasting our time inputting data. Right? DataMaster will solve that problem for you, and DataMaster 6, of course, is rolling out across the country. The ability to not just download the data, but also to analyze that data. That's what DataMaster helps you as the appraiser to do. Check them out. Go to datamasterusa.com for more information. One more time, datamasterusa.com. And speaking of efficiencies, I've been using Alamode software for over 20 years. I will continue to do so as long as they continue to serve me as they have in the past, because Alamode allows me to do more with less. They have all kinds of built-in tools and abilities that I can't get anywhere else. For example, in the comps grid, I have an opportunity to look at all of my comparables at once. I don't have to switch different pages. I can scroll across. I can see as many comparables, whether it be 3 or 13, all at once, and be able to see the adjustments that I've made, and the data that I am dealing with is right in front of my face, so that I as an appraiser can make the best decisions possible. That's one of the things, among many, that Alamode will do for you. Go to alamode.com, or you can pick up the phone and call them at 800-ALAMODE. Finally, we are sponsored by Working RE Magazine. George and I have been talking today about the future of appraising. And I'll tell you, if there's anybody out there that understands the future of appraising, it is Working RE Magazine. Why? Because they have such a vast network of appraisers and appraiser experts across the nation that they are constantly reaching out to for input into their both written, their physical copy of Working RE, and of course the digital copy. You can go to workingre.com and sign up and make sure that you're getting the physical copy, and also sign up for their email that comes out on a pretty regular basis with information about your profession as appraisers. Go to workingre.com for more information. One more time, it's workingre, as in real estate.com. All right, folks, we are back. We are talking with George Dell. George is a guy I look up to, a very smart guy. He's an MAI, SRA, ASA. I see him as a professional who really understands the appraisal profession. And he has a blog. You can find it at georgedell.com. And there's a series out there that he's written recently about stats, graphs, data science. And we've been talking through some of the meanings and some of the applications. And first of all, welcome back to the program, George.
Thank you very much.
When I was a younger appraiser, I have to admit, and maybe I'm revealing too much here, George, but I have to admit when I was, and this was 20 plus years ago, okay? And as appraiser, I honestly did not deal with too many quote unquote stats. I didn't see a lot of graphs, didn't make a lot of pie charts, and I just didn't deal with a lot of that side of things. It really was more about finding three quote unquote comparable properties, making some somewhat subjective adjustments, trying to explain a little bit of what you did and turning the thing in. Now, I'm not proud of that, but that's how I learned. I think that's how a lot of appraisers learned. But things are changing, aren't they?
Well, exactly, and that's exactly the way I learned too. You find two or three comps; they're all written, or you had to go to the assessment office, county recorder to get information. And then you might have gotten a comp from a friend. We used to go to chapter meetings just to exchange pieces of paper and comps. And then a couple of days later, you get a call back from that broker that that one comp you really needed, and you got a fifth comp, and you go, "Wow, I'm almost done." Gathering the data was the most important thing we did back then. Today, you push a button and 3 seconds later, you got 37 comps.
Yeah. And you use comps. You use the word comps intentionally. I mean, you truly can have 37 quote unquote comparable properties in front of you, and now you got to decipher through all of that.
That's right. We left off with that definition of the shorter definition of valuation, which I said evaluation is a systematic study of the structure and behavior of natural world observation. That still sounds pretty broad.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to cut that down some more, and I realized that for appraisers, I'm looking to the future, and I didn't want to cut down our definition of the process we do to the kind of thinking we've had as well. Our job is to provide a point value. And that's our little box. That's our little jail. And by gosh, don't get out of that jail. And yet the huge opportunity for people like us, with competence in markets, with competence in understanding of what a property looks like, the ability to confirm when it needs to be confirmed. We need to broaden that out to provide those other services that, in my opinion, are actually highly needed by our clients. And we're the best suited to fulfill those needs, and we're not doing it.
No, that's absolutely key, George. I've been saying for months that if you as an appraiser need or want to survive into the future, you have to show your value. You have to show why your clients still need you, because they can go to the computer and get a number. If you can help them to understand why it's still important to have a human being in that process, and not just a human being, but a professional, someone who understands what the data means and can interpret it properly, that's where our future lies, in my opinion.
Well, that's exactly right. Actually, that's one of the things I've started saying in my classes. The stuff that I teach is about do-it-yourself analysis. We've been sold a lot of things over the years. Push our button and get an instant answer. Only $399.95 plus $20 a month or whatever it is. And the problem is that if we can push the button, get an easy answer, somebody else can too. Appraisers need to know how to do their own analysis, need to maximize, optimize the things we're good at. But go ahead and use computers to help that human brain concept.
Absolutely. The series is Stats, Graphs, or Why Stats, Why Graphs. It's Stats, Graphs, and Data Science with George Dell. You can find it at georgedell.com. George, before we let you go, you talked about some classes that you're teaching. Tell us a little bit more about that, and if somebody is listening and interested in learning at the feet of the master, where would they need to go to find out more?
Well, obviously to the website, georgedell.com or valuemetrics.info. Those two websites are interrelated. I have a class coming up, next week in Oxnard, California. That's north of Los Angeles. The month after that, I believe, Orlando, Florida. Just got back from Indianapolis. See where else? Denver, Colorado coming up. Fixing to go to Northern California in November. And obviously, if anybody has any interest, let me know where you'd like me to go, and I'll go. I typically like to have a local group host the class, whether it's an Appraisal Institute chapter or one of the many independent appraiser organizations around the country. I'll work with all of them. and I have a pretty large email list myself, and obviously have a bit of a following. So sometimes I just teach on my own, and when there's a need for it, GeorgeDell.com, as you said.
Thank you, George. I can't thank you enough for taking time today to be on the program and dispelling your knowledge to individuals across the nation as appraisers who want to have a future in this profession, which I think is there, and your wisdom will help them to get there. Thanks again, my friend.
And thank you for what you do.
We've been talking a little bit about the future of appraising. Folks, if you want your hand held just a little bit going through that process, I highly encourage that you join my Appraiser Academy on a monthly basis. In fact, just this morning, we met for over 2 hours and just fielded questions from appraisers across the country who are trying to do more with less, who are trying to navigate these waters that are changing with the appraisal profession. And we were able to have a great discussion about some things that they can do to make sure that they will be viable into the future. Join us by going to theappraisercoach.com and clicking on memberships. Again, it's the appraisercoach.com and click on memberships.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.
Hello.
Hello, George. How are you?
Oh, just fine. Thank you.
Good. You're on your phone.
Yes. Did I do it on the computer last time? I tried Zoom-US/J/8, then this code number.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not getting anything. Oh, thank you.
So, okay, good. Here we go. I'm going to go ahead and mute you and we'll get started. And like I say, when I say your name, you'll know that your mic is hot at that point. Here we go.
Okay.
All right. Make sure I'm recording here.